Hey guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about hours of service because the rules have changed and I don't think we've ever really covered it. So those of you that don't know what hours of service are, it's a regulation that the government or the Federal Highway Administration has that regulates the time you can drive based off the number of hours you have worked. It's designed to keep essentially tired people off the road. They don't want you working for 20 hours and then driving somewhere and falling asleep and killing somebody. Hours of service are pinned to you, the driver, not the vehicle. So if you switch vehicles, the hours of service follow you, not the vehicle. And it applies to anybody who is driving commercially, which, in other words, anybody driving for work. So that would apply to all you guys. So under the hours of service regulations, we fall under what they call the short haul exemption, which allows us to not use ELDs, which are kind of the new big thing, which is electronic logging devices. Big pain in the ass. So in order to stay under the short haul exemption, we must not break the following rules, which I'll read to you, more than 8 days in a 30-day period. So it's a rolling 30 days, so 30 days behind me, I cannot have broken these rules more than 8 days. And breaking the rules is not a violation in of itself. It just means if you break the rule, then you have to fill out a log for the day. So the rules are, you cannot drive more than 11 hours in a day, and that means actual time behind the wheel. You cannot be on duty for more than 14 hours in a day. On duty mean on the clock essentially. Or you can do 16 hours on duty once a week, so once every 7 days. You also have to return to the same location as you started, and you have to stay within a certain distance of your starting location. So the distance is given in what they call an air mile radius, or essentially if you dropped a pin on a map and draw a circle around it. So the rule is 100 air miles for CDL vehicles and 150 miles for non-CDL vehicles. And air miles is not actual miles, it's nautical miles, which converted to regular miles is a little bit more. So for CDL, I'll put these maps by the time card area. It's 115 miles, which covers damn near all of our work area. And then for non-CDL, it covers 172 miles, which is pretty much the whole state of Washington. So I talked a little earlier about it. If you break any of those rules, you have to fill out what they call a RODS, which is a record of duty service, which is essentially just a time card. So it's a paper log that has, I went on duty at this time, I drove this time, I took a break this time, I did other stuff at this time, and I came off of duty at this time. Super simple. I'm going to get those guys, or those available to you guys. So once you fill out the RODS, that is what the officer will ask for if he thinks you are out of your short haul exemption. So keep those, and then even when you're done with them, we're required to keep them for 6 months in case we get audited. Asphalt companies specifically have some exemptions. The rules usually say you can't be on duty for more than 12 hours, but because as asphalt drivers you're not driving all the time, you take breaks at the plant and breaks on site, we're allowed 14 hours on service every day. And then we're also not required to take a break every 8 hours because the breaks are intermittent throughout the day. There's something else called a driver salesman, which most of you guys will qualify under. So the rules for that is you cannot drive more than 50% of your time on duty. You are not required to fill out RODS when you don't return to your home location. Kind of in general, if you think you should have had a paper log and you don't, claim the driver salesman. So exact things to say to Mr. Officer if he ever asks about the hours of service rods, or ELDs. The proper thing to say is I am exempt under the short haul provisions, or if you say anything short haul, that'll get the point across. The last thing you want to say is, oh, I don't have a log, because then he thinks you should have a log and we are not complying. So we are exempt under the short haul provisions. Do not, try not to say anything that would provoke him to be suspicious. We are generally following, or we are legally following the rules, so we don't want to make him suspicious that we're not. If in doubt, you can always just tell them, and it is the case is that all records are going to be at the office. So if they ask to check your time cards, say we do it electronically and all the records are at the office. And the other thing is that from what I gather, a lot of officers will sometimes kind of probe and try to incriminate you for hours of service things, even if you're in compliance. So they don't have a direct way of proving you're out of hours of service. So if in doubt, stick to your guns, claim the short haul exemption, and we should be good. So a couple quick scenarios that we have run into and you might run into again. Say we travel to the Tri-Cities for a 2-day job. So we drive there, we stay the night, we do the work, and we come home. So you would be required to fill out a paper log if you are driving a CDL vehicle. So truck drivers, when you arrive, you just fill out your paper log at the end of the day. Most of the crew members will all fall under the driver salesman category, where they are not driving 50% of the day, so they are not required to fill out the RODS, record of duty service. And even most truck drivers can probably get away with that, because the time they changed, they didn't drive more than 50% of that day. So starting that day, the Tri-Cities is now your place of report. So if you end that day in the Tri-Cities, even though you are not returning home, you're returning to the same spot you started, so you don't have to fill out a paper log. So just to review, if we go to the Tri-Cities, spend one night, drivers of CDL vehicles must fill out the log for the day that they left and did not return back to the yard. And they would also be required to fill one out for the day they returned to the yard, because you're changing your starting location. So another quick example, we travel to Vancouver for a week. Same as the other situation where the CDL drivers have to fill out one for the day they leave, and they also have to fill out one for the day that they return. They do not have to fill out a log for the days that they were there, because essentially the days that they were there, the starting location was in Vancouver. They didn't leave the air mile radius, and they didn't work more than the 14 hours. So they're not required to fill out a record of duty service. So it's a lot. It's kind of confusing. I'm going to print this out and post the maps for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Just to summarize it again real quick, is 99% of the time we don't even have to worry about this. But if you're going out of town and you're spending the night, or you're traveling outside of Washington into the far reaches, look into filling out a paper log. And when we get there, feel free to ask questions. So thanks, guys.